Hey, everybody. Hey, welcome to chapter 17, the divisions of faith. And as usual, I'm doing this from, not as usual, but I'm doing this from a remote location, so hopefully everything will continue to work well and the internet will stay connected. So we normally start out with a little Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And then after that, I might sing a little song and then some Hare Krishna. And then after that, we'll read together, okay? Okay, so and my guitar is it's down here in Florida, so it may go out of tune. I hope you won't hold that against me. All right, so here we go. All right. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, sorry. I see you here, Lord, I see you there. You're all around, you're everywhere, deep in my heart, you're seated on the throne. You are the one true love, and you're the only home. The universe is spinning round you, and not a blade of grass can move without you. How could I ever help but think about you when everywhere I look, Lord, I find you. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Radhe. I see you here, I see you there.
No.
You're all around, you're everywhere. Deep upon this rock, I build my home. To you alone, Lord, I sing this song. The universe is spinning round you, and not a blade of grass can move without you. How could I ever help but think about you? Everywhere I look, Lord, I find you. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Radhe. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ramo, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Radhe. Sorry about the guitar being so out of tune, everybody. I'm down here in Florida, and this guitar has been in my car all day in a hot sun. It's about 100 degrees, and it's about 200% humidity. So just a little kirtan to get started. Hey, Susan, how you doing? So glad to have you. Yeah. So we're down here. I don't know if you can see out the window. I'm going to turn around so you can look. There's some waves back there. Do you see those? So I'm down here on business, and I'm gonna have a little beach time while I'm at it. So okay, guys, listen. So we're on chapter 17, and we're going to start our reading. There's only 28 verses tonight, so it's not that much, and I think we'll get through it quickly, and then we can open it for discussion. So the chapter 17, the divisions of faith, and I should mention that in chapter 18. The Lord continues to discuss the divisions not only of faith, but he discusses the divisions of renunciation, or the various types of renunciation, whether they're in the mode of ignorance or passion or goodness, the divisions of work, and he talks about the division of determination, and so this goes on. But this is a short kind of chapter, about 28 verses, and we'll start now. Text 1, Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of Scripture, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds, in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this. Text 3, O son of Bharata, according to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. Men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods. Those in the mode of passion worship the demons. And those in the mode of ignorance worship ghosts and spirits. Those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the Scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body, as well as the super soul dwelling within, are known to be known as demons. So who would like to pick up on text 7?
I can do it.
Go for it, Susan.
Okay. Even food of which all partake is of three kinds, according to the three modes of material nature. The same is true of sacrifices, austerities, and charity. Listen, and I shall tell you of the distinctions of these. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, and give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. Such nourishing foods are sweet, juicy, fattening, and palatable. Foods that are too bitter, too sour, salty, pungent, dry, and hot are liked by people in the mode of passion, and such foods cause pain, distress, and disease. And food cooked more than 3 hours before being eaten, which is tasteless, stale, putrid, decomposed, and unclean, is food liked by people in the mode of ignorance. Of sacrifices, that sacrifice performed according to duty and to scriptural rules, and with no expectation of reward, is of the nature of goodness. But that sacrifice performed for some material end or benefit, or performed ostentatiously out of pride, is of the nature of passion, O chief of the Bharatas. Pass.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very nice. Okay, anybody else?
So text 14.
Text
Text 13. And that sacrifice performed in defiance of scriptural injunctions in which no spiritual food is distributed, no hymns are chanted, and no remunerations are made to the priest, and which is faithless, that sacrifice is of the nature of ignorance. The austerity of the body consists consist in this: worship of the Supreme Lord, the Brahmanas, the spiritual master and superiors, like the father and mother. Cleanliness, simplicity, celibacy, and nonviolence are also austerities of the body. Austerity of speech consists in speaking truthfully and beneficially and in avoiding speech that offends. One should also recite the Vedas regularly. And serenity, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purity of thought are the austerities of the mind.
Very nice. Very nice. Okay, who else?
I'll read a few.
Okay.
This threefold austerity, performed with transcendental faith by men not expecting material benefits, but engaged only for the sake of the Supreme, is called austerity and goodness. Penance performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship is said to be in the mode of passion. It is neither stable or permanent. Penance performed out of foolishness with self-torture or to destroy or injure others is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Charity given out of duty without expectation of return in the proper time and place and to a worthy person is considered to be in the mode of goodness. Can we keep going?
Okay, anybody else? Who else?
Okay, shall I? But charity performed with the expectation of some return or with a desire for fruitive results or in a grudging mood is said to be charity in the mode of passion. And charity performed at an improper place and time and given to unworthy persons without respect and with contempt is charity in the mode of ignorance. One should perform sacrifice, penance, and charity with the word tat. The purpose of such transcendental activities is to get free from the material entanglement. The absolute truth is the object of devotional service, and it is indicated by the word sat. These works of sacrifice and penance of charity, true to the absolute nature, are performed to please the Supreme Person, O son of Prita. But sacrifices, austerities, and charities performed without faith in the Supreme are non-permanent. O son of Prita, regardless of whatever rites are performed, they are called asat and are useless both in this life and the next.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. See, it's a short little chapter, but it packs a pretty serious punch. So are there any questions just right off the bat anybody wants to bring up or mention regarding this chapter?
I had a question at the beginning. I'm just trying to figure out what it was. I don't know if I can remember what it was. So I might have to
go on, and then if you remember, just let us know.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, in the last chapter, the divine. Oh, excuse me. The last chapter. Let me go back to that real quick. I wanted to read a couple of things to you real quick out of that last chapter. Okay, so the divine and demoniac natures, when you reach the last few verses there, they're pretty potent. Text 21 in the last chapter says there are 3 gates leading to hell. Can anybody tell me what those 3 gates are?
Lust, greed, anger.
Lust, greed,
anger.
Thank you very much. Yes, lust, greed, and anger. And every sane person should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. So the person who's escaped these three gates of hell, they perform acts that are conducive to self-realization, and gradually then they attain that supreme destination. But if a person discards, spiritual injunctions and just acts according to their own whims, they will not attain perfection, nor happiness, nor the supreme destination. So this is very, very important. And so Krishna says at the very end, one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by the regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may be gradually elevated. So what that does to me is it just makes me realize that there's so many thousands of different philosophies, religions, sectarian concepts. Somebody said one time that there were over 60,000 different denominations of one religion alone. So try to imagine. And so when you say Hinduism, like in India, you just blanket all these different religions together. There's so many different religions in Hinduism, right? You've got Jainism, Sikhism, Shaktism. You've got Shivites, you've got Vaishnavas, you've got impersonalists, you even got Voidists. So you've got such a wide variety of concepts that it can become very, very confusing to people, can it? So Krishna in the Bhagavad-gītā speaks very, very clearly to Arjuna, and he tells him the most confidential knowledge, the king of all education, the most secret of all secrets. That information that will give us the self-realization and God realization that we all long for, and deliver us from this place of misery, of repeated birth, death, old age, and disease, which no soul has any interest in at all. So when we think about India, there was a survey done back in 1996, I think the survey said, and they asked a big survey in India, and they asked the people, what is your religion? I mean, you're a Hindu, what is your actual religion? So over 70% of the people said that they worship one God, Krishna, right? So that's monistic philosophy, and that's also called Vaishnavism, okay? Personalism. We're created in God's image, just like we see in the Christian faith, that we're created in God's image. And our job is to develop our relationship again with God. We've forgotten that in the material world, and now it's time to come back. But there are a lot of people who actually worship demigods, or demi meaning partial, or of half gods. Actually is the actual meaning of demi. It means a half god. And there are lots of gods within the material universe. There's actually 33 million demigods that the Vedas talk about. Actually, in another place in Srimad Bhagavatam, it even mentions that there may be as many as 90 million demigods. And these are principalities that manage the lights, the water, the electric of the universe, so to speak. And they're great devotees of the Lord. They're in the mode of goodness, and therefore they've become elevated to the heavenly planets and are responsible souls. They live according to the Vedic principles. They don't break those principles, right? So they may worship some demigod for a particular purpose, and then they may change and worship another demigod for another particular purpose, because they're interested in some type of business arrangement within the material universe to elevate themselves, become more powerful, more happy, have a better wife, have better children, have more wealth, live longer life, this and that, and this and that, and this and that. We can go on and on forever. But we know that we've quoted the verse many times, Brahma bhuvanal loka, loko yam karma bandhana. In other words, wherever you go in the material universe, you're still bound up by your own karma. And you're going to be under the influence of the three modes of material nature. We just read that. And you're going to be affected by those three modes of material nature. You're going to be carried away and forced to act. Just like Krishna told Arjuna. He said in the 18th chapter, which we're going to study next, in the perfection of renunciation, he said, Arjuna, you can try to not act according to your proclivities based on your modal influences, but you'll be forced to act anyway. Because in your occupation as Kshatriya, you've been trained to be a warrior. Your whole life is designed to fight for religious purpose. And so here it is. So Krishna asked Arjuna at the very end, are your doubts now dispelled? And Arjuna said, yes, of course, and I'm prepared to act according to your instruction. So the Bhagavad-gītā is an instruction to Arjuna because Arjuna was Krishna's friend. He was not envious of Krishna, and he was his devotee. And Arjuna was already on the platform of Raja Rishi. He was a saintly royal personality. You didn't have to start with Arjuna and go, hey, don't commit adultery. Please don't try to steal from all your friends and neighbors, like that. Don't go out and molest people. He didn't have to go through those basic 10 commandments with Arjuna. He was already the perfect citizen. He was already living the perfect life. So therefore, he went ahead and went to the highest, topmost knowledge. And on every chapter, you might remember, he said, now she'll give you knowledge that is more confidential, superior to the previous knowledge that I've given you already. Krishna says that on several occasions in the Bhagavad-gītā. So the idea of this knowledge, Krishna is kind enough because it's hard for us sometimes to understand these modes and how they affect us. So he goes through it very, very carefully in these previous chapters, talks about the various modes of nature, how they affect us, in what way they affect us, and we've done a pretty thorough study of that, including the divine and demoniac natures. And all of those qualities of the divine were enunciated. All of the qualities of the demoniac were enunciated. And then the 3 gates of hell were discussed. And now Arjuna wants to know, what is the situation of a person who doesn't even follow any of these principles in the Shastra, but they create their own religion according to their imagination? He asked him, he said, are they in goodness, passion, or ignorance? So there's so many religions that have been created that are not in a sampradaya, that are not being handed down thoroughly, that might be concocted by somebody to justify some form of sense gratification that they're attempting to get to. See what I'm saying? So we rationalize and we create these various divisions of faith ourselves based on the mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness. So Krishna goes ahead and explains that they're, according to the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith, right? So when he says men in the mode of goodness worship the demigods, let's look at that just for a moment. In the purport of that particular verse, Prabhupada says, different kinds of worshipers according to their external activities. You can understand who they are, right? You can understand their mind, right? But by their activities, their external activities. According to the scriptural injunction, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable. Now, I find that interesting. Comment by Srila Prabhupada. Only the Supreme Personality of Godhead is worshipable. Right? But those who are not very conversant with or faithful to the scriptural injunctions worship different objects according to their specific situations in the mode of material nature. The other day we had a kirtan, and one of the persons that was there, I asked him about their faith, and they said that they were pagans. I said, oh, okay. So that is a form of worship, isn't it? The Virata Rupa, God's body, the mountains, the ocean. I'm on the ocean right now. It's very amazing. It's awesome. Our God is an awesome God. There's no question. All of these wonderful things that we see, palm trees and flowers and all these varieties are very enjoyable. When the breeze is blowing, it's very nice. Everything is very, very wonderful. But then again, it can be a hurricane. In another place on the same ocean here that I'm on, there's 130 mile an hour winds, there's flooding, right? So we may think that, the cessation of misery is enjoyment. But actually it's not. It's just the cessation of misery. Just like if we're hungry, that's a miserable condition, so we eat the food, it's pleasurable, but it's just cessation of misery. So any object of the sense that we find our obsession with becomes our vice. It becomes our destruction. It becomes our spiritual ruination because it deviates us from the path of worshiping the one true God. And we can fall off that path very, very easily. And but we find that some people in the mode of ignorance, they worship ghosts or demons, right? If you go, there's certain countries you can go to, they've got voodoo, they're trying to manipulate the natural laws of nature for their own purposes, right? We've seen that, we've heard of that. There are other people who would justify their activities by using someone else as their scapegoat. And they won't be honest and say, oh, well, this is the truth, and I follow the truth. But instead, what they do is try to let someone else take their karma for them. They would like that to happen, right? They would like to absolve themselves of their sinful reactions. And they're looking for an easy way out. They don't want to actually perform austerity. They don't want to actually perform penances because those are difficult. Those are difficult situations to perform. So therefore, they're kind of looking for an easy way out, right? Just like in the first introduction to the Bhagavad-gītā, it says that we have imperfect senses, right? So therefore, we can't know perfect knowledge because our senses are imperfect. And as a result of that, we have a propensity to cheat. We actually want to take a shortcut. And we look for ways to take a shortcut. It always comes back to bite us in the very end. So we can't know knowledge by this ascending process, like they tried to build the Tower of Babylon so they could go see God. But God has to come to us. And God does come to us through this sampradaya. And in that sampradaya, God gives us this information. That's why we have this Bhagavad-gītā as it is. You can go read a lot of Bhagavad-gītās, and they may not move you to devotion because there's so many interpretations done by men, mortal men, who would like to put their slant on it for some purpose of their own. Generally, fame, profit, adoration, distinction, something like that is their motivation. So you have to look at that and you have to be very careful because those people may be in the mode of passion, right? They're looking for a result. They may perform religious activities so that everyone will notice them, and they do it out of pride, and they do it out of arrogance, and they just do it in name only. They're not sincere to do it. They're looking for position within the church or what organization or whatever it is they're doing. And that is the cause of their fall, actually. Pride comes before the fall. We know it's a demoniac characteristic. Krishna described that in the previous chapter. So many of these worshipers will worship Brahma, Shiva, Indra, Chandra, the sun god. They'll worship these various gods. If you look back throughout all history, you'll see that there's been lots of temples erected to these various gods. And these are various demigods. And so they worship, again, for a particular purpose. But people in the mode of ignorance or passion, they may worship individuals. Prabhupada mentions in this purport that he could recall that during the Second World War, there was a gentleman in Calcutta. I use the word gentleman loosely because he actually worshipped Hitler. Now, why would you worship Hitler? Because thanks to the war, his dealings in the black market had allowed him to amass a very large amount of wealth. So therefore, wealth was his deity. And because Hitler gave him the benefit of helping him deal in the black market, he became very, very successful. So a lot of times powerful men will do that. They'll worship God for more power. And some people worship God in the mode of ignorance, and they do austerities that cause their body harm, and they actually affect their own, the super soul in their body. The super soul in the body is also sentient. Every sense that you have, Krishna is called Harishikesh, that means the master of these senses. So Krishna feels what you feel. He knows what you know. He understands what you know. So in the remote villages of India and various places in India, sometimes they'll go to a forest and there may be a tree that has some demon living in the tree. And so they'll offer sacrifices so they can receive benefit in that situation. And if you look at throughout all history, there's lots of stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Puranas that describes that. But when a person's in the mode of pure goodness, they worship Vasudeva. They worship God. They worship Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam in the 4.3.23 says, Sattvam Vasudam Vasudeva Sabditam. When a man is situated in pure goodness, he worships Vasudeva. So the purport is that those who are completely purified of material modes of nature and who become transcendently situated, they worship God. They're not interested in any business dealing in the material world. They're not going to the ancestors for something. They're not going to anybody else. They've surrendered themselves absolutely, fully, wholeheartedly to the Lord. And they know that they'll be protected by the Lord. So if everything emanates from God, if we're all God's children, all the demigods, all of us are all God's creation, then we should go directly to God. There's a verse in the Bhagavad-gītā earlier where Krishna says, whether you're filled with all kind of material desires, or if you have no material desires, whatever you want, you should go to Krishna for it. And you should depend upon the Lord fully for his mercy and grace upon you. You should pray constantly and chant God's holy names. You should fill your mind with this information, this knowledge that we're receiving from the mouth of God. There is no conversation like this anywhere. As a matter of fact, Sanjaya says at the very end of it, after hearing the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, his hair was standing on end. Literally, he was affected in the most amazing way because that conversation was the solution for this life of death in this dark world. It is a solution. And the solution was given very carefully and very scientifically by Krishna to Arjuna. So we have to rise above the three modes, ignorance, passion, goodness. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves sinking down lower and lower in other species, and we can become completely forgetful. If we become forgetful of God, then life is lived in vain. There's no purpose for the life if we're not using it for the service of God. This is the only purpose of our existence. Just like the hand, its only purpose is to serve the body. It doesn't have an independent agenda. It doesn't go off and do whatever it wants to. Right? The hand obeys. So our job is to obey these shastric injunctions, because by obeying these shastric injunctions, we can become free of this illusion that has haunted us, that drags us through these three modes, just like these waves that are crashing outside the window here. We're being crashed and ground up in these various waves of the three modes of material nature. So our goal is to associate with persons who are of a transcendental nature, people who are looking for the truth, people who want to understand these things, people who want to converse about these things and be involved in understanding the mission of human life in the world. So Prabhupada just goes on here in the, here it is. So those who undergo severe austerities and penances not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body, as well as the super soul dwelling within, are known to be demons. So who comes to mind when we think of that situation? Anybody that comes to mind who tortured their body unlimitedly to receive power in the world? Does anybody know anybody like that in the Shastra? I see Pramanjali say. What'd you say?
Not in the Shastras, but I was thinking about in Christianity, they have the flagellants. Back in the Middle Ages, they used to whip themselves and beat
Oh, yeah.
themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Penance means self-punishment. Penance, if you look up the word penance, we were talking about penance, right? Bonnie and I were talking about penance. But if you look up the word penance, you'll find out that penance means self-punishment for the things that you've done that you know are wrong. You know, I remember one time my brother-in-law, he came when he was a little boy, he came to his mother and he said, "Mama, I need a spanking." And she went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I need a spanking." And she goes, "Well, what for?" He said, I've been bad and I need a spanking. So he was willing to accept penance to rectify himself. Even as a small child, we recognize these things. Well, who I was thinking about, Pramanjali, was Hiranyakashipu, who tortured his body to the point where ants had eaten him alive. And he was standing on his tiptoes with his hands raised in the air until his body was consumed in an anthill. And he kept his life air alive in his bones. And he forced Lord Brahma to come. So that's austerity really in the mode of ignorance, isn't it? Right? So, and we see that some people go out in the mode of passion and they perform these austerities. The other morning I got up, I was doing japa, and I was watching, it was real early, and I was watching these cars just fly by. And these people were in the cars, you could see they were impassioned. They were like, it was insidious looking on their face. They were trying to get to work, right? And somebody, traffic jam was causing them grief and stress and strain. Because they're going out working hard all day and night like hogs, dogs, camels' asses, Prabhupada said. What? For a little something to eat? A little sex life you could have like that? A little place to live? A little defense? Even the bugs, the insects, and the hogs, and everybody gets that automatically. There's no need for us to go through this torturous condition. Prabhupada said, simple living, high thinking. So simple living means we live off the land as simply as possible. We don't go to all this extraneous effort. Whatever your karma is comes to you naturally. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, you can expect that to happen. Just like in our life, sometimes we've seen great fortune come to us and we're like not expecting it at all. Sometimes great misfortune seems to come to us as well. So that's karmic retribution in action. When we're a devotee, that's a token of the punishment we deserve, right? So therefore, we're even grateful for that because we realize that the Lord is being kind and merciful and bringing us to Him, and these are just nudges for us to come back home, right? So there, when you think about these modes and you look around yourself and you try to understand what is a mode of nature, what is ignorance, passion, and goodness, how does that affect people in their lives? You can actually see it in action in front of your very face all day, everywhere you look. You can identify what mode that person was in when they were doing that act. And by doing that identification through that analysis to see what mode is affecting you or anyone else at that time, you can become quite expert at correcting yourself, right? Krishna said earlier in the Bhagavad-gītā, you can know how other people feel by the way you feel, right? So you can know how you feel, so you can know their pain and their suffering and their pleasures based on how you feel as well. So, we have to have compassion for these suffering souls. We have to have compassion for these suffering souls. And later in the Bhagavad-gītā, Krishna says on this last chapter, and by the way, we're in the 17th chapter, so I only got one more chapter to go. And they're going to start a series of Srimad Bhagavatam, stories out of the Bhagavatam. I think you'll really enjoy that. But this philosophy is so important for us to get down before we even read Bhagavatam, in my opinion, because by knowing this philosophy and reading the Bhagavatam, the lights come on. The whole thing becomes animated in your mind. All of a sudden, you see these qualities in people. You see their reactions. These stories show mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness, right? Pure goodness. Sudasattva, what are the symptoms of pure goodness? Complete detachment, total dependency on the Lord, right? No need for anything in the world at all. Whatever Krishna gives, that's sufficient. We're not so concerned. We put ourselves in God's hand. That's pure goodness. But to do something even in the mode of goodness for a result is still fruit of reaction. It's still karma. You can still go to the heavenly planets and you can enjoy for a long time, but you're going to fall back down. You're going to fall back down. It's like if you go to impersonalism like that, you'll fall back down from that because the soul has to be active. It cannot be inactive even for a moment. And so what type of activity will you choose? Will it be activities in the mode of ignorance? Do you know what activities in the mode of ignorance are? You should become conversant with those activities so you don't involve yourself in them, right? And in the same way in the mode of passion. The mode of passion is karmic reaction. It's creation of karma in the material world. It feels real good at first, and then it brings about great suffering at the very end. And in the mode of goodness, it's difficult in the beginning, but then pleasurable at the end. So these things Krishna says, but if you want to be in the mode of pure goodness, then Krishna said, then take this information and give it to other people. If you do, there is no one as dear to me as you. And there will never be anyone as dear to me as you because you've given this information to other people. And just think how many times all of you guys have affected people in your life just by being who you are and understanding a little bit of this shastric information, applying it in your life and demonstrating mode of goodness behavior. That's very effective behavior. It can change lives. People will see that and they will emulate that activity. Krishna says whatever great persons do, common people follow. So you're a great person because you're here, you're hearing the Shastra, you're one in millions, and now your job is to disseminate this information as widely as possible. That's your job. That's my job. That's everyone's job. And by doing that job, we are in a platform of transcendence immediately, and no one will be more dear to Krishna than you for doing that. So think about that. Think about that in your life. And also read these modes. Now, in the next chapter, I told you earlier that Krishna goes on with these divisions. He talks about division of knowledge, division of understanding, division of determination in life. He talks about all this stuff because by understanding this, you can rise yourself out of these modes to a state of pure goodness. If you just simply follow sadhana bhakti, you'll be in a state of pure goodness. Anyway. So, and we can see this in the type of food that people select to eat, right? Mode of ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness. We can see that type of food. According to their nature. The same is true for their sacrifices that they make or the charities they give to or the austerities they determine they want to perform. He even says they're divisions of happiness. In the next chapter, you're going to get to hear that. Talks about divisions of happiness. So like happiness in the mode of ignorance, what does that look like? Right? So Krishna gives all this information to us as we go along, and it's meant for our correction. It's meant for us to correct ourselves. If we find ourselves going wrong, our job is to read this, study this, actually apply this information to our life. So has anybody in here ever had food that was maybe so pungent or dry or salty or hot or sour or whatever that it just caused them distress and misery? Anybody ever experienced that?
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. So now you know what mode in the food in the mode of passion is about, right? So you can understand.
And I tell you what, Gayatri, Dasa, I've had it at the temple. You know, when you have Bengali cooks in the Atlanta temple, we have.
Yeah, no, they like it over there because they need that fire of digestion. But that may be prasadam. So let's try to understand that hot is not bad It just depends on what kind of hot it is. I mean, there are peppers that are very, very healthy for your digestion, and there's other ones that cause burning and the colon sensations that you don't want, that are truly in the mode of passion. So we have to understand what food is, and we have to understand why it is. I remember when I first joined the temple, and they brought down the Mahaprasad, and I was like, what in the... I'd never seen food that luxurious. I'd never tasted food like that. You know, on top of one of these sandeshes, there was silver leaf. It looked like a piece of jewelry, right? You seen that? And then on the burfi, there was gold leaf, actual gold. And they said, yeah, it's been offered to Krishna, it's Mahaprasad, take it. It's the first time in my life I'd ever eaten gold. I thought, this is wow. How wonderful this Krishna conscious program is that we're sitting here eating precious metal. But the body needs it. Body needs these things, right? So there's certain things that are maybe hot that are still in the mode of goodness. So you have to look into this very carefully. But we do know a mode of ignorance, right? Anybody can identify food in the mode of ignorance, right? Putrid. Just go to your refrigerator after something's been sitting for a couple of days. That's mode of ignorance. You want to get that out of there, get rid of it. It could be made, it could be tasteless, it could be decomposing, it could be made of untouchable things, you know, just horrible things. Like, I don't even want to talk about it, but I, somehow or the other, I got this a little video of someone eating like a squid. Or an octopus, that's what it was. It was alive. And they were eating this octopus, and it was in their mouth like that. And I'm sitting there thinking, what would inspire a person to do that with purple blood or whatever running off their mouth? And I thought, how is it possible that someone was so hungry that they decided, that really looks delicious? Right? I mean, think about it. Or anything. I mean, have you ever really, honestly, looked at an animal in the field and thought, that really looks delicious? No. If it weren't being processed behind closed doors, just like death is being kept behind closed doors, we don't want anything to interrupt our sense gratification. So please, let's don't see the slaughterhouse, right? Let's don't see the funeral home. And let's just be happy and put it out of our mind, right? Just like an ostrich sticks its head in the sand and there's dangers all around. The predator didn't go away just because the ostrich stuck its head in the sand. From Anjali, you got a raised hand. What was your comment?
Yeah, I wanted to interject real quick that, hunters, back in the day before they actually had grocery stores and everything, we hunted and killed our own game, and I went south and seen my grandmother, take a chicken and wring its neck and pluck the feathers and all that. See, we miss all that when we go to the grocery store and purchase flesh, and we don't see all that.
Yeah, the suffering
and
that
also,
goes on. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and yeah, I just wanted to say that, that we don't see all that. And also as a Black body devotee, and growing up in my culture, being former slaves, we were given all the unwanted foods, and we had to find a way to cook them and eat them. So we've eaten, Prabhupada mentioned foods that are cooked 3-4 hours. So we've cooked chitlins and hog maws and, pig feet and things like that. You cook those 2 and 3 hours. Greens, you cook them 2-3 hours with fat back and stuff like that. And that's in the mode of ignorance.
Yeah, well, we all kind of grew up in that, didn't we? I mean, all of us had to kind of grow up in that. I mean, I remember my grandmom, putting up stuff in the smokehouse and killing stuff and just thinking it was just all part of a natural thing, but it broke my heart. I will tell you that, how they, on Easter, they give you these little chickens, right? You get these little chickies, right? They're pink, blue, red chicken. They're kind of dyed. We didn't know, but they got us some of those one year, and I became best friends with the 2 of the little chickadees, right? One of them was my brother's and one of them was mine. And it would fly up and sit on my head, and it would, nest in my head. It would stand right here. It would actually give me kisses You know, I mean, it loved me. It would fly into my hand and jump around and stuff. And I remember my mom saying, well, now these chickens have got to go, right? Because they're flying all over the house and they're passing stool all over everything, right? They don't know. So I said, well, let's just keep it outside. She said, well, Granny, it'd be better at Granny's house. So Granny's got the farm. So the chickens go away. We're crying. We're little kids. We're crying. And so we go to Granny's for Thanksgiving. I think you can see where this story's going, right? So we all sit down and we say grace right at the table for Thanksgiving. And they serve out the food. And so we're eating the food, and Mom looks over and says, now you tell Granny how good that is. And we're, Granny, it's delicious. Thank you, Granny, Granny. And she goes, you like that? And we said, yeah, Granny, thank you. And she said, well, you should. And we go, well, why? And she said, because you raised it. So it was my little chicken that we were biting into, and we threw it down, ran away, and cried as young children. This was the effect that it had on me and my brother, because these were our best friends we were eating. You understand what I'm saying? So in the mode of passion, you see different living entities in every different body, right? Okay, that's mode of passion. Mode of goodness is, no, you just see that we're all equal spiritual souls in everybody, whether it's grass, tree, whether it's an amoeba, or whether it's a dog eater. We see everything with equal vision because we understand their souls are like our souls. They've just fallen into a karmic labyrinth, like the banyan tree example that we talked about earlier, right, in the other chapter. So the idea is we're here to help each other get out of this mess that we're in. Otherwise, we're destined to suffer these abominations over and over again at the hands of people who would exploit us because they're in the mode of ignorance. And therefore, they have no compassion for you. They don't feel your pain. They don't feel your suffering. They torture themselves. They'll torture you as well. We see this throughout all of history. So it's a very dangerous situation we're in. We've got a responsibility as human beings to correct it. And Krishna has given this information very scientifically so that people, no matter who you are, you don't need blind faith. You don't need blind faith. This is information that anyone can understand and apply to their lives and experiment with their own self and actually get the results of this information scientifically. Just like a man, when he eats a full meal, he knows he's full. He doesn't need any further proof. He doesn't need your approval to know that he's full. He knows he's full. He ate the meal. He feels he's full. He's satisfied. So when you fill yourself up with this higher taste, it's not only a physical higher taste of cleanliness and all these other virtues that we develop that we were never taught by our grandparents and our parents and stuff, because they didn't know, right? So the idea is now we can elevate ourselves with this information. So when we perform a sacrifice, our life is a sacrifice. Every moment that we have, we give it back to Krishna. That's a sacrifice. When you become Krishna conscious, that means that you see Krishna in everything, everywhere. When we started this meeting tonight, I sang a little song. I don't know if you got to hear it, but you can go back and hear it. Unfortunately, my guitar was so far out of tune. It was such a distraction. I'd have to stop and fix it. But the song says, I see you here. Lord, I see you there. You're all around. You're everywhere. You're deep in my heart. You're seated on a throne. You are the one true love. You're the only home. The universe is spinning around you, and not even a blade of grass can move without your sanction. I cannot help but think about you, because everywhere I look, Lord, I find you. See, that is the mood of the devotee. Everywhere I look, I find you. I see you in everything. Therefore, you're never lost to me, and I'm never lost to you. And I can develop my love and my friendship for you in that way. So, So basically, simplicity, gravity, self-control, purification of one's existence. These are recommended, right? They're recommended. Penance performed out of pride or for the sake of gaining respect, honor, worship. That's not what we're after. We don't want that. And penance performed out of foolishness without, designed to torture yourself or destroy others or injure others, like we see in the voodoo world and so forth and so on. That's just one example. There are hundreds of examples of that. That's in the mode of ignorance. We're looking for some power over somebody, influence over somebody. But charity given out of duty without any expectation of return at the proper time, proper place to a worthy person. That means a Brahman, person situated in the mode of goodness. That's elevating and can gradually lift you up to a transcendental state. Okay? So our idea is we want our whole lives to be a charity and a sacrifice and a penance and an austerity. And our austerity is to taste nice prasadam, enjoy delicious foodstuffs offered to the Lord, smell the wonderful incense, the flowers offered to the Lord, see the beautiful deities with their beautiful outfits. Rangavati knows about this too, right? Those deities are so beautiful. We take darshan of the deities every day. We're just like, oh, they're so gorgeous. We fall in love with God by doing that. Calling on God's name, God reveals himself to you within the heart. He actually dances on your tongue. It doesn't get any better than that, y'all. That's the Yuga Dharma. That's the Sanatana Dharma, to be Krishna conscious. So anything done as sacrifice, charity, or penance without faith, though, in the Supreme is a useless waste of time, both in this life and in the next. Somebody's got a hand up. Go for it.
That'd be me.
Okay.
So, there are some who are not attracted to devotional service. There are some who think prasadam does not taste good. What are you eating? I have tried to give some of my friends prasadam and they're like, oh, I don't like that. What is that? And sometimes you show them the deity, it's like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you worshiping? What was that on the altar? I said, it's God. Oh, God is not a statue. They call them statues, So everybody's not attracted to devotional service. So I know that's by the grace of Krishna or some kind of fortune from, being fortunate from my past life that I'm even attracted to Krishna consciousness. Because a lot of people who aren't.
Well, that's what Krishna said. He said, those who are partake of the atheistic nature of demons, who are attracted to the impermanent, they do not surrender to me. Krishna explained that. Remember in the last chapter? He said they don't surrender to me. They're looking for demoniac pleasures in the material world in the darkness, right? So what is daytime for the self-realized is night for them, and what is night for them is daytime for us. See what I'm saying? So we have to understand that we're not of this world. These things that these people are attracted to, they're not good for them, and they're not good for us. And we need to disassociate ourselves entirely with that type of activity, because that way we can be gradually elevated and we can become happy. Those people are simply waiting for a karmic train wreck to happen in their lives. And they may be enjoying and living off some karma at this time, but in the future their suffering is guaranteed by their own hands. So we don't want to participate in that. And I understand exactly what you're saying. It's just like anything else. Hey, I want to give you this one example. So this example is that, okay, let's say there's a society of people living in a cave. They don't know anything about the clouds, the sun, the light, the plants. They don't know anything about it. They're living in a cave, right? So somebody comes in from the outside and goes, hey, man, there's sunshine. It's beautiful. There's delicious fruits and flowers. Everything is wonderful and rain, and they think he's crazy. So what do they do to that person? Hang him on a cross. Do something, right? Because he must be crazy. We don't have an experience of that. So the idea is it may take lifetimes. It may take lifetimes. It may have already taken lifetimes. So just like a honeybee goes to so many flowers, right? And if there's no pollen on a flower, what does it do? It goes to the next one. It doesn't just get bummed out. It realizes that, this is the way it is. Everything is happening by God's hand. Everyone is following his path. It explains that, in all circumstances. God is meting out all of this justice in the world. Wherever we are, that's where we're supposed to be. And we have to be elevated from there by what? The devotee comes and he sacrifices himself to take the time to give you that information. That could change your life forever. That could be the beginning, the beginning of the end of the material life for you. And it's all by the causeless mercy of the spiritual master who came for you. Right? You didn't ask. Spiritual master came for you. So that's why we're so, just grateful that the spiritual master took his time for us fallen, wretched, conditioned souls lost in this material world with no hope of getting out without them throwing the lifeline. Okay, so we're about to run out of time. Is there any other question or comment anybody wants to make? From Anjali, I think you had one more.
I do.
Okay.
There is, isn't voodoo practiced in India as well as cannibalism?
Well, I know that cannibalism and all that stuff has been practiced in dark areas. I know there's even an island off the coast of India or somewhere where they can't even approach the island because the people don't know anything about the outside world and don't want to know. So, no, I'm sure that, mode of ignorance is everywhere. You don't have to go to India to do that. You can get it anywhere. Mode of ignorance is everywhere. And there's a lot of sophisticated ways to experience the mode of ignorance and the mode of passion as well that modern Westerners have created. And you can see it on most of the billboards when you're driving down the street. So you got to avoid a lot of that. So guys, listen, I don't want to go any farther unless anybody, if you need to check out, you go for it. If anybody else has any other thing you want to say before we sign off, that is the chapter 17, Divisions of Faith. And then we'll be doing the last chapter, Perfection of Renunciation, which is a long chapter. We might actually have to go for 2 sessions with that one, because it's so intense. He finishes these divisions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Let me ask you before you close. So the yogis who walk on hot coals and they lay on beds of nails, is that considered penance in the mode of ignorance?
Well, I would say that it would at least be passion, wouldn't you? Ignorance or passion.
Yeah, I would.
Yep. It depends on what you're doing it for. If you're doing it for the sake of being famous in your community, that would be probably passion. You know what I mean? I don't know. You just have to look at that. But see, that's why Krishna has taken so much time to describe these different things so that we can practically understand what he's talking about. And in the next chapter, he's going to do it some more for a while. And at about halfway through the chapter, Arjuna is going to be talking to him about sannyas and what does renunciation look like and so forth and so on. So we need to gather together these last time or two and relish this wonderful information directly out of the mouth of God, and I will tell you, it's life-changing.
You mentioned Lord Shiva. There are some in India who think that Lord Shiva is not, even though we know that Lord Shiva is a demigod. But they worship, their families have worshipped Lord Shiva for years and years as God. And he's the closest thing to Krishna. They taught me early on that Lord Shiva is to Krishna as milk is to buttermilk.
Yeah, it's just a transformation to say, Shiva is an incarnation, a plenary portion of God in each universe for the destruction of the universe, ultimately. And he actually is the best devotee of the Lord because he is constantly in meditation. We know the story. Somebody interrupted his meditation. They were immediately burned to ash, or Cupid did that, immediately burned to ash by distracting him. So he is a lover of the Lord, and those people have never read Srimad Bhagavatam, because if you read the prayers of Lord Shiva in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it will make you weep. You will fall on the floor and just weep, because Shiva's devotion to Vishnu is out of control. Beautiful. And so God expands himself from the original expansion of Balaram and Radharani, like that, and all of those expansions come as portions and plenary portions of portions, and they become avatars, guna avatars, they become Manvan avatars, they become Shaktavesha avatars. Many of them come in different forms at different times. Why? For your redemption, for your reclamation. They come again and again and again and again and again and again. They won't let you forget. And the spiritual master comes. You don't have to ask. He's giving costless mercy out. Right? So, yeah, but good questions. And if you really look at the survey in India, there were, in 1996, there were about 25 million Shivas. And there were 600 billion Vaishnavas. Now, why has that been forgotten? Okay, there's a little history lesson here. In the 1890s, they had a World Congress of Religions. I don't know if you're familiar with this. And they invited people from all religions to come together and present their philosophy. And they went to the Ramakrishna ashram. And they got Swami Vivekananda. He came and represented Hinduism. And he presented it as demigod worship and impersonalism primarily, because he was a student of impersonalism, right? He was more of a jnani yogi. And so therefore he had not come to the personal realization, the highest realization, which is called Bhagavan realization. So if you want, that's nice. That's impersonalism. That's Brahman realization. Chit, that's the jnana. That's realizing that God is the super soul in all beings. But if you really want Ananda, which is bliss, you got to come to Bhagavan realization. And then you'll realize that with Ananda comes Vigraha. Vigraha means the form. So these beautiful forms that we see that God has presented. So you said something about a statue on the altar. Prabhupada actually uses that word, statue on the altar. But the Archa Vigraha, what is it called? Archana Pada. That book describes how exactly to make the deity, what materials, exactly how to worship the deity, like that. So the deity then becomes transcendent. And Prabhupada said, just like if you put iron in a fire, the fire makes the iron just like fire. So the deity is that fire. Your devotion then is transcendent. And the Lord accepts it, just like you would an authorized mailbox, put your letter in. You can go stick it somewhere, the postman is not going to pick it up. But if you do it in an authorized fashion, the postman will pick it up. You got to raise the little red flag. You got to have an authorized post button. So the deity at the temple is ancient. And the idea of deity worship and elaborate deity worship goes back yugas. Right? It's actually an eternal function of how we can come to that Bhagavan realization, and how we can control our senses in the material world by associating with the beautiful Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Lord's various expansions like the Panchatattva, Radharani, Nishringa, on and on and on and on we can talk. Okay? So guys, you are beautiful. You're wonderful. Go ahead.
So when we practice the four regulative principles, that automatically puts us in the mode of goodness, right? Prabhupada says if you don't withhold those four regulative principles, you're not even considered human.
Well, yeah, but we have to understand that people have to start from wherever they are. And Prabhupada, when he came to the Western world, he stayed in the homes with people who were meat eaters, who were doing this and that. He didn't bother. He wasn't worried about it. He started initiating people who still had vices, because he knew that eventually by doing that, they would give it away. They would give it all up. So in the same way, we don't really rail on people about whatever their problems are. We've had worse problems than them, okay? So what we do instead is we encourage them in the way of devotion, right? You know that nice verse in the Bhagavad-gītā we read, some time ago. It says we don't disturb the mind of the is it the ignorant, I believe. We don't disturb their mind, but we encourage them in the way of devotion. So if some people are disturbed, we come back and talk to them in more elementary language. It's very difficult for somebody to go from kind of nowhere to everywhere all at once. Understand the relationship with God. We've been in this dark world for millions of years. So we have to show some kindness and compassion, some love, and introduce them to the holy names, primarily in some prashadam. If they don't like the Indian food, cook them something, whatever. Cook them some prashadam with Italian, or cook them whatever you want. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. They don't have to become Indians. Right? I mean, prashadam is what you offer the Lord, right? Like if you have a fruit, that's not an Indian fruit, is it? It's a fruit. So you offer the fruit to the Lord, then you cut it up. Doesn't really matter. Okay, guys, as long as it's not food in the mode of ignorance and passion, don't forget. So listen, thank you all so very, very much. I appreciate you coming with me to Florida on my trip to Florida. I got some business to do down here, but I'm going to spend a couple of days out here chanting on the beach. So I'll be thinking about each and every one of you, praying for you guys, and sending you as much good vibration as I can muster. Okay?
Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. I'm going to sign off at this point, okay? Have a great evening. Hare Krishna.